Your gut regulator, what you feel, the brain has very little to do with that. It's more of the sensory neurons, which are along the nervous system. So once you start regulating your nervous system and you start learning how to process after you've regulated, then you start to be able to hear your gut a little bit more. And you start to, maybe listen and trust. And once you build that trust, you start to trust what you feel, not what everybody else thinks or feels.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode.
Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Sherianna Boyle, and we're going to be talking about emotional detox. Sherianna is an international best-selling author of numerous books, courses, and audio programs that cover every aspect of mind, body, and spirit. Her books and her protocols blend psychology, energy healing, practical and spiritual approaches, which produce dynamic results. We're going to be talking about the acronym CLEANSE as part of this emotional detox protocol that she has developed over the years and how she coaches people to heal from trauma and reactivity. Sherianna shares about her own story, which informs her teaching and her coaching. So let's jump into it. This is Sherianna Boyle. Good morning, Sherianna. I'm so glad you're here. I love your name, by the way. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, thank you. Good morning.
And we're going to be talking about emotional detox. I think everybody has these experiences in their life where they feel almost a victim of their own emotions and having these responses to things that sometimes we can't even control it. We don't even realize it's going on. So let's talk a little bit about how you coach people to do this and who are your clients and how you got started. All these wonderful things that explain Sherianna Boyle.
Well, thanks for having me on your show. And, well, I got started, I've been in the field of psychology. That's what I went to school for. So early on, I was a school psychologist. And I worked in schools with families and children. And then I've done many other things. But in terms of emotional detoxing, that really came about in around 2016. Emotional Detox was my 7th book that I wrote. Previous to that, I was writing a lot about anxiety. I have books on anxiety for adults and then also for parenting children with anxiety. So Emotional Detox came about really from my own curiosity on, what's this all about? How do we process our emotions? What happens when we don't? And so I started exploring the topic and I pitched it to my publisher. They were like, okay, this is good. You're on to something. And then I was hit with my own emotional trauma about 5 weeks later. And with that, I was a mess. And I actually went to the publisher and I said, I can't write this. I'm not okay. I'm in trauma, the trauma responses you speak about. And they were kind enough to say, you're going to write this. We're going to take the timelines off and just do it when you can. And I was like, I did not see a future with me. I thought maybe years before. But the good news is I had already been researching about emotions. So when I went in to get support, when I went to therapy, I had in my mind, as this therapist is talking to me, I'm thinking, okay, that's going to help. That approach is not going to help. And I'm literally I'm listening through this lens of what I just learned. Yeah. And I'm like, and so I did go through a few therapists until I found one that aligned with what I had found in the research, what I was working on, and what I was going through.
The interesting thing to me about, and maybe we can speak to what you were going through if you want to. Obviously, you don't have to, but the idea of emotional responses. Some things are emotional responses, and sometimes there's something else in there too. It's like separating those things, and also like what is a normal, healthy, expected emotional response. But it all sort of comes down to some type of reaction to what's going on, real or imagined, and
Right.
all sort of filtered through or informed by things that have happened in the past that make you a certain type of a person. And, a simple version is my parents yelled at me every day growing up. So when somebody raises their voices to me, my chest locks up and I want to like punch them in the face because I can't take it one more second. Somebody else who grew up in maybe a calm home where parents didn't do that, they look at somebody who's yelling at them going, what's wrong with them? This is like really inappropriate. And what's going on with you? There could be a completely different response.
Right.
And obviously there's things that happen in life that are just bad.
There's the triggers, and I talk a lot about that. Emotional detox is the triggered response, and the triggers are the memories. What has one person react more strongly than another person? You put them in the same situation, similar set of circumstances. One person just can't handle it and is a mess, and the other person's and it's the memories. It's the stored memories in the body, and the level of intensity. So with emotional detox, for me, when I went to do the research, I found a lot of things on the physical detoxes, but I didn't find much on the emotional. So I kind of had to create it, Bob, from scratch. And it's based on these pillars, and one is that all your emotions matter. Processing them matters more. All of them matter, because what we do as humans is we kind of pick them apart. We put labels on them. We're like, these are the good ones and these are the bad ones, and these, right? And what I learned in the emotional, through my trauma and helping others, is when we do that, we're judging the emotions, for one. We're still very much in the brain, because that's what the brain does. It categorizes things. It tries to make sense of things. Not everything can be made sense of. And so the foundation that it stands on is, well, yes, they all matter. Even the guilt, even the shame, but processing them matters more. And so the point of an emotional detox is not to get rid of your emotions. That's what I want to be clear about. It's to get rid of what you were just talking about, to detox the reactions. Some reactions, reactions that are a little bit more healthy in nature, I call them more responsive, because they're more conscious. So how I respond to you, and then how I react to you. Reacting is more unconscious.
Yeah.
And so reactions are often, when they're unconscious, it's ways that we've learned to make the uncomfortable comfortable. And some of those ways are control, or minimizing, or playing it down, or shutting down, avoidance, also eating, substances, lots of ways that we are trying to, quote unquote, manage what we feel. But when I went through my time, I knew that was not the answer. So even though my survival part of me, like so many of us, thought, okay, how are you going to survive, right? So my trauma, which I talk about in the core book, Emotional Detox, was finding out about my husband's affair. And so when I found out, it just sort of went in that shock. And what are you going to do? How are you going to survive, and take care of yourself? And so I knew enough, I'd researched enough to know that if I needed to let my emotions be a priority. and give myself time to process, because I could potentially, if I didn't, I could potentially be dealing with this pattern for the rest of my life. The pattern of reactivity, as you mentioned, I could go back in and revisit this over and over in many, many different ways. And I also wanted to be there for my children.
Yeah.
So I knew, okay, even though you want to fight and you want to flee and you want to freak out, you've got to process.
That is sort of the word that, what does that mean? When I ask myself, how do I process something? What does that actually mean? This means I put it in perspective. I feel the pain of it. I don't how do I do that? It's like, okay, I've had a betrayal, which is, people get betrayed all the time. Every single human being is betrayed at some point in their life, whether it's, in a romantic relationship or a business situation or a friendship. It happens. It really is a part of being a human being, especially when you're a trusting person, or you've just made some really crappy choices in who you've decided to associate with. And sometimes, the instincts tell you, oh, I shouldn't do this, and then you do it anyway, and then you get burned. I mean, these things happen. For me, sometimes I'll look back at those situations, and I can relive it and get just as angry and hurt as when it happened. I don't dwell on these things. I think I have most of those things in a pretty decent perspective at this point. It doesn't rule me, but I can really do that. I mean, I can go back to that moment and try to relive it, and then change the outcome in my mind. And this is what I should have done.
Sure. Yeah.
It's really crazy making, but I think it's a survival thing, and it's also a way to sort of not feel the extent of how much something actually hurts.
Well, it's also, the research shows the stronger the emotion tied to the event, the more likely it's going to go into the long-term memory, and also into the nervous system, into your, emotions do live in the body. We know that.
Yeah.
And what question did you ask me?
Well,
Bob?
I don't know. I was just rambling.
Yeah. How do you process?
Yes.
That's
what does that
asking.
mean?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
That was the big question that I had too. And so what ended up happening was I ended up creating a method called CLEANSE. It's an acronym, CLEANSE, and it's in all my emotional detox books as well as Emotional Detox Deck. And basically, it's an acronym for, okay, where do you start? You start at the C, and that is clear reactivity, which is about learning how to regulate your nervous system and learning how to center yourself in the moment. L is called look inward, and that is, how do you identify an emotion without reliving the experience? Like you said, you can imagine it, and all of a sudden your body's going through it again. So you're actually rehearsing the neurochemicals around that and creating patterns in the body. So how do you not do that? But at the same time, without burying it, because we do need to acknowledge it. So, and then E is emit. Previous to Emotional Detox, I'd written a book on mantras. I literally published it maybe 8 weeks before I started researching for Emotional Detox. I did not even have Emotional Detox on my radar, really. It just kind of came to me. And with that book, Mantras Made Easy, I knew that this E step, which is called emit in the cleanse, is all about the sound as vibration, creating sound, and the power of sound and mantras for healing and transformation. So the E uses vibration to help you start to move these emotions. A is for activate, and activating is about learning to observe and be the witness. And also it's about the heart, opening your heart again. You can't really completely heal with a closed heart, shut down. and is nourish, and that is learning how to sit with something, as you said, learning how to be with something. But yeah, who wants to sit and be in an emotion of anxiety? Who wants to learn how to sit in anger? So that's why it falls the fourth step of the cleanse, because now you've moved enough energy of your emotions. You're in the end. By the time you get to the end, you're in the fourth step of it all, the fifth step of the cleanse. And so you're able to sit and observe that energy. And then S is surrender. And that is a acknowledgement on your part. That is your free will. That is, what are you allowing in your life? If you're not doing this, then I'm focusing on this. And it brings clarity. And then E is ease. And that's all about coming back to who you are. And that's the I am. That's that I'm not separate from whatever I'm creating. I am the energy of love. I am the energy. And so as you land in the I am, and that's what after you go through these steps, and I've written them out hundreds and hundreds of times for people in all of my emotional detox books, so they can just go through the steps on their own. You land in love. I mean, you land in realizing that's really all there is love. It's about being love and feeling that love, and that's where that compassion is, and acceptance, even for the things that you can't change and you don't like, and you can't go back and delete it or erase it, but you can learn to be at peace with it.
I guess the length of time that would take depends on the amount of work you're doing, and the depth of the wound, and how much you're willing to look at yourself. And I know for me, I don't like to feel bad. I mean, I'm being serious, even though I'm kind of joking. It's like, I don't like to cry. I don't like to, I don't like to let myself feel hurt. I like to figure out ways to sort of intellectually circumnavigate those feelings. I mean, and I'm aware enough of that I choose not to do that when I know it's not going to help me. But the instinct, I think, for people is to not feel bad feelings, or feelings that feel bad. Not to say any feeling is, like you were saying, that there's nothing bad, really. It's just
right.
They are
to numb the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to numb. There's so many choices.
But that's because they haven't learned how to process. So once you experience a process, processing an emotion is an experience. And the best example I can give is it's the difference between, let's say I give you a plate of food, and I can say, okay, or look at a menu. Okay, what would you like? Okay, well, I see it on the menu. Well, that's a lot different than somebody taking that plate of food and putting it in front of me. They put it in front of me. Now I have an experience with that food.
Yeah.
I can taste it. I can smell it. I can see the texture. I can, I've used my hands. That's an experience. Talking about an emotion is like looking at a menu. You have the idea of it, but you kind of do need to experience what that's like through your sensory system. Once you process something, once you get through the cleanse, you feel better. And what ends up happening, you're like, oh, I start to associate emotional processing with feeling better. So if you have a mindset that emotional processing means you're going to go through all the crap that's not it. You're actually going to feel better. So I look forward to processing every day, because I've never had an experience where it makes me feel worse. And if it does, I'm probably reacting.
I was just wondering, as you were talking about this, thinking about, having been a child raised in a certain home and raising my own children. And I'm sure there's ways that child development would make it that an easier and more natural thing for people to do, to be able to process these things, than being raised in a home where that stuff isn't maybe not even looked at, or just shoved under the rug. It's so. I would think that some people would be very sort of. I'm always fascinated by people that take a hit in life and they rebound, or seemingly do, pretty well. They feel bad, but then they go, all right, well, next, and they seem to be able to do that certainly better than other people. Some people, you meet certain people and they have something happen to them and they become angry and bitter and they stay that way. The world can't be trusted. That's sort of a worldview that a lot of people have. And I wonder how much of that goes back to the family of origin or some other issues, because you do have to sort of overcome, belief systems too while you're doing this.
I mean, the research on that talks about, sort of hardiness, what makes someone more psychologically more hardy, able to withstand the stress or the elements or the events of life. And some of it is social support, having that support system around you. That's why models like AA are so helpful with people in recovery. Or if there's like exercise groups or something like that, that definitely makes a difference. I think that was more how my support system was really more my, having a class to go to, moving my body, in that way. The other things that the research speaks to is your attitude towards stress. So if you're someone who already kind of looks at stress as, just unbearable before this happened, it's going to be tougher, but if you develop a attitude, like you said, sort of stress is a part of life. We all have it. And it can strengthen you. We need it to some degree, to keep us going. Then you'll do a little bit better with these circumstances. For me, it was really the information that I had gathered, and I realized later that those 6 books that I had written prior to Emotional Detox really prepared me for it. In fact, I can see elements of the first 6 books threaded through the cleanse that I just went over, and I almost feel like I was being guided right along for this purpose of creating this. And so having knowledge and information about your emotions, I feel is very beneficial in terms of resiliency. And if you get knocked down, you're not going to feel so lost. And I was lost to a certain degree because I couldn't, for a bit, find a therapist that aligned.
Yeah.
I knew right away. I was like, nope, this is going to re-traumatize. Nope. I knew right away. The questions they were asking, how the direction we were heading. And mind you, I was at the time, my children were little. I had to go home and function.
Yeah.
I can't go and dig everything up and then go home and, and just, rest and digest everything. So for me, it was not going to work. Maybe somebody who has the time to dive into all that might enjoy that experience. For me, it was not going to happen. So I had to develop something. And what I learned is it doesn't take long to process. It just takes consistency and a routine and a regular basis. Don't wait for something to happen to process what you feel. Don't wait for the buildup. Do it like you brush your teeth. Or at the end of the day, the way you end your day, okay, kind of sit down for a second with yourself and cleanse. And let these things come up. They will, and just release it. I cleanse usually at least once or twice a day. Because I know it now and it's kind of rote and it's easy for me. But, a lot of the cleanse when you dive into the tools is about how to use your breath properly, how to use the power of the breath and helping to identify what you feel, how to move the energy of what you feel, and learning, getting those little nuggets from emotional processing. The wisdom goes up. You get clarity and really anchoring the nuggets, because those nuggets become a little bit of a lifeline for a little while. It's like intuition, when you allow something to come through, and it's like you just know that, okay, you're going to be okay, and you're on the right track, and you can really rely on your internal resources rather than the world doesn't need to be a certain way for you to be okay.
There's a part of, I think, everyone, really. It's that part that is untouched by the things around you, people, events, all that. It's just, it stays in there, and sometimes it's really deep, but it's that sort of essence of what it means to be, a living being. And no matter what happens, that part, I guess you could say resilience is part of that. But to tap into that in the darkest moments seems to be, there's a lot of comfort in that when you're able to do that. And it doesn't really change what's happened at all, but it's sort of, in a way, and I hate to say this in one way because it sounds a little woo-woo, but the things that happen that we don't like can be a real gift in that it focuses you on that part of yourself, which you take everywhere you go. It doesn't rely on any of the outward world stuff. And it's kind of, when I think about some of the things that have happened in my own, life over the years, something will happen that I don't like, and then I don't understand it. It doesn't, I don't get it, and I'm confused by it, and it hurts. And then down the road, something else happens, feel the same way, and then you go down the road a little bit more, and you realize, oh, that's why those two things happened. It brought me to this third thing, which is something I didn't even know about when the first two things happened, and it's better than both of them. I've had a number of those things that are like that in various areas. But that idea, you just said it. It's like I need to have X, Y, and Z to be lined up perfectly in order for me to be, content, to be happy. I need this to be this way, and I need money to be this. I need a relationship to be this. I need to be living in this place. I need to be, and you can work towards those things, obviously, but somebody said to me, if you're not happy before you get these things you think that are going to make you happy, they're not going to make you happy when you get them.
No, definitely not. It's all an illusion, really, and it looks good on the outside, but very often on the inside, it's very shattered.
The one thing you don't know is when you don't know what's going on inside another person. You don't know why they're, they may seem to be a certain way, but you don't really know. You also don't know why people do the things they do sometimes. And that may be out of their own discomfort. It's hard to be compassionate towards someone that's, wronged you, but on another level, they wouldn't have done that if there was something actually going on that was, a lot healthier.
Yeah, in order to have compassion, you have to feel.
Yeah.
You can't numb. And people don't want to have, they think, okay, well, that makes it okay, or they get away with it. There's all sorts of things,
Right.
That means, that makes me weak kind of thing. If I
Absolutely.
let myself feel, but if that won't come through, and you have to kind of flip it to remembering that love is the strength. It's the true power. The power isn't the control. And unfortunately, we live in a society where that is that is what a lot of people associate power with: money, control, influence.
It's actually celebrated.
It is celebrated, yeah. And so you have to look at what do you believe? It really does kind of force you to, what's important to you? What are you going to go along with what everybody else thinks? And that's going to come from your gut.
Sometimes you walk alone in those periods of time.
Definitely. Very often, or you're lucky if you have one person, right? And that's why therapists are important, because sometimes they're, your greatest ally in these situations. They help you through. But I've had a lot of therapists come to my conferences since, and when I do workshops and things like that, and they want to learn a little bit about what I'm teaching and how they might incorporate it into their work, and that's always nice. Again, I've been on both sides of it, and I can see where there's room for growth there, and it is changing. We're learning a lot about the mind-body connection, in our body. This isn't always going to be a brain thing. You're not always going to figure out something.
Yeah.
And your gut has nothing to do with your brain. I mean, I know it sends signals and all that, but your gut regulator, what you feel, the brain has very little to do with that. It's more of the sensory neurons, which are along the nervous system. So once you start regulating your nervous system and you start learning how to process after you've regulated, then you start to be able to hear your gut a little bit more. And you start to, maybe listen and trust. And once you build that trust, you start to trust what you feel, not what everybody else thinks or feels.
Let's talk a little bit about these two sort of physical things that we can do, which are breath and sound, because I think those things are really
those are in the cleanse.
Yeah, because there's something about vibration. And, you get the simple version is you listen to music, it changes the way your mood, your how you feel.
Music, and I teach all sorts of movement classes. That's the other thing I do is I teach yoga, I teach dance, I teach, fitness kind of stuff, and you have to kind of do what works for you. I mean, when in my situation, believe it or not, yoga was not the thing for me. At the time, it was more of something that was really challenging my mind, like dance was it. Because with dance, you really got to pay attention. Where are my feet? Where are my hands? What's the music doing? What's the beat? And that can really bring you in the moment, as well as, like you said, the music and the sound and the moving your body in new ways. Extremely healing. There's so much research on this now. It's probably what I'm going to be I'm working on my next emotional detox thing now, and it's really going to be focused a lot on the power of movement and emotional process. I'll still have my cleanse in there because that's in everything I've written, but showing where and how to, because how can you incorporate it into your movement practices? Because there's some classes I would go to where I felt like there was no space for that. Or there was just, the pace was so quick, didn't have time to just take a breath and have a moment to sit. A lot of it is with pacing and learning, and that comes from understanding emotions. They need a second to land, and for people to connect with them. So there is a little bit of art. I actually developed cleanse yoga after, and I got it approved by the National Yoga Alliance. And I have a training on my website, which is sheriannaboyle.com, and you can get trained in cleanse yoga. It's and towards credit, if you're a yoga teacher, it will go towards your licensure there. But that's all about how to process your emotions on the mat. But anybody can take it. You don't have to be a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And you get a certificate of, completion for cleanse yoga.
Is there a lot of sound in that?
Well, cleanse. It's got my cleanse, which has the sound, the sound with the mantra. Yeah. And, the sounds that mantras are great for the nervous system. I mean, they've been around for thousands and thousands of years. They've been a part of many different meditation techniques. Mantra meditation as a way to help you tune in and process, move the energies in your body, for sure. And so, the cleanse has sound. Every cleanse practice, you will be doing a mantra. not very long. It could be just an inhale, exhale, making a humming sound, making another specific kind of sound, and you'll see right away how you feel. And then that lands you into the A after that in the cleanse. So E is emit, that's the sound. A is activated, and that is learning to observe without judgment. Because a lot of times we judge the thing that we're trying to process.
Well, I noticed, like for me, many years ago, I did quite a bit of talk therapy. It just was not completing what I wanted, how I wanted to feel, because it was all up in my head. And I realized at some point, like, it's enough talking already. I have the information.
I know. I've had enough. Yeah. Uncle.
Yeah, right. I know what happened. I know what these people are about. I have it's good information. It's really
sure,
super
of course,
valuable.
Yeah.
But now what? It's like
now what? Yeah.
Because things are living in your body, and you can feel this energy like clogged up in certain areas or stopping you from doing things. Which is a really strange feeling, like it's really like fear, really is what it is. And then what am I afraid of?
Sometimes, just from coaching, my experience being emotional detox coach is what can happen is if you talk too much, it feels like you almost get out of sync with each other. So I always, there's some talking in a coaching session. Once I hit about 15 minutes, I'm like, we got to stop talking, right? We cannot spend the entire hour talking, right? 15 minutes, I get it. People have to share, give updates, give information about the situation. So there's like an understanding of what we're working on here. 20 minutes maybe. But after that, you can almost go out of sync. On an energy level. Once you start emotional processing, it is like it's kind of like when somebody looks at you and they send you, they think loving thoughts, right? And they're looking at you. You might feel it in their face. You might see it in their face. You might feel the energy. You might feel the calm or the safety of them. When you start emotional processing with your clients, you not only become a safe space where they can talk confidentially, but you feel safe in that there's a rhythm that takes place there. It's hard for me to even explain. You create a container for that person, and they get to, if they're not able to figure it out through their brain, they get to experience it. You're almost like a mirror, a reflection of what does it feel like to be in a state of processing. And you hold them through that process until you don't have to hold them through. It's like riding a bike and putting your training wheels on. And then eventually you take the training wheels off and you're like, okay, I know how to do this. I can do this. And I'm not so caught in my head with the step 1, step 2, step 3. It just feels natural.
Get the person to a place where they don't need you.
Exactly. That is the goal of coaching for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing about talking,
we can really go on about
this. This is where it can be a problem.
We're fed up with talking. Yeah.
If you sort of realize that whatever you put your attention on grows, and when you talk about this thing that happened or these things that happen, they're in one way you're trying to figure out what it is and how to get out of it, but the other part of it is it's going to grow also. So there has to be a balance, I think, between getting the information out and dwelling on something to the point where it's getting stronger rather than being put in the correct perspective.
And things get said in reactivity, even from the therapist sometimes or the coach. Things get said, and what can happen is that person goes home and they say to let's say they had a conversation about their partner, and they go home and they say, well, the therapist said blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, the therapist is wrong. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden it brings tension in the home, and it's like, okay, maybe that wasn't that whole dialogue or dynamic that happened in the session. If it's not translating over in a way where it's supportive and helpful, you have to watch that. If we're using it as, well, they said you're doing this and you should do this better. That's giving advice.
I'm laughing because
right?
I've been there. I know exactly what
It's tricky because it can spark everything up, and then it can inhibit emotional processing. Nobody's processing their emotions; they're just reacting.
Well, and then you're into winning.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then crushing your opponent.
Yeah. But if there's too much talking, it could go there. It could easily go there. It is. You're always being a little bit taunted by your client. They do want you to sometimes give them advice or your opinion, so I'm very like, let's process. I don't know the answers until we process. It comes through the energy of emotional processing. It doesn't come from me to you. It comes through you. So let's see what happens after you process this. So you're upset with your partner. Let's process that.
The other piece of all this too, which is, I think, really difficult sometimes, is when a situation happens, whatever it is that's, disturbing and feels awful, to look at, well, what's my part in it? Did I do something? Not that I'm right or wrong, but what's my part in it? Which is a really hard thing to look at. For instance, my instincts told me that this was not a good person to get into business with, but I felt like they could make me a lot of money, so I didn't look at the red flags. I shoved them, under the carpet, and I did it anyway, even though there was something about that person that I knew wasn't good. So my part is that I didn't listen to my own instincts. I'm just picking that as an example.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And that's a hard thing to look at, to say, oh, this never would have happened had I listened to my true inner voice.
Yeah, or your confidence wasn't low.
Yeah.
You didn't, believe in yourself, or you felt like somebody knew more than you. I can't tell you how many times I've put myself in those situations, too many times, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I think I'm teaching them more than they're teaching me here. It was supposed to be the reverse.
Especially when they act like they know more.
Exactly. Yeah, too many times I've had to pull the plug on that, or put some real boundaries in, or just end relationships. Now I'm very, very, I have a lot of discernment about that. And also, getting to the point where you realize you know your stuff well enough where you don't need other people, or you don't choose it.
There's less people, but the people you do have are higher quality.
Exactly.
For you.
Yeah.
What is the name of your podcast?
Emotional Detox.
Oh, all right. So, folks, you got to listen to Sherianna's podcast if you want to get them detoxed.
There's a lot of episodes there. I've been doing that for quite a few, I think 8 years now.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for being on The Exploding Human with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
And I love talking to you. This is one of my favorite topics.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Because I think we all need, to feel better.
Yes. We need to feel.
Yeah.
Period.
Oh, yeah.
Not talk, feel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I really appreciate it. You have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. You can also listen on YouTube. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Sherianna Boyle for being on the show. You can find out more at sheriannaboyle.com and by listening to the Emotional Detox podcast. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.